Hello, my name is Yijoon Park, and this is my advocacy project for writing 39C, Solutions to the California Prison Overcrowding Crisis. So prison overcrowding is a social phenomenon that occurs when the demand for space in prisons exceeds the allowable capacity for prisoners in a particular institution. So a prison cell is designed to hold 4 people, but instead there are 8 people instead. So to help give an idea of how bad overcrowding has gotten, take a look at the conditions that prisoners face. The picture on the left is a photo of a gymnasium of a prison in California. There was no more room left in the jail cells, so they resorted to bunk beds in the gymnasium. And of course, this has very harmful effects on the prisoners as well as the staff, which leads to high turnover rates. So prison population has increased nearly 6-fold over the past 25 years. The chart on the right shows the incredibly exponential increase of prisoners in the past 25 years, reaching up towards 1.6 million in the US state and federal prison populations. On January 1st, 2010, state prisons were running above their allowable capacity between 40%, and federal prisons were operating at 36% above capacity. So what are the reasons for overcrowding? The main culprit is that criminal penalties have gotten harsher. The police actively hunt wrongdoers much more so today than in the past. This is of course attributed to the war on drugs, from Nixon to Clinton to Ronald Reagan, and even today, politicians advocate a zero-tolerance policy towards criminals. They do not want to appear weak on crime due to some misguided reasons. For one, they want to get re-elected, and what results are broken policies that have led to overcrowding. The one example of this is the 3 strikes law, where no matter how harmful or the crime is, if you mess up 3 times, you will be considered a felon. The figure on the right shows that even if you commit very non-harmful crimes, if you reach 3 strikes, you will be considered a felon. As a result, as shown in the figure on the left, laws such as the 3 strikes law have led to overcrowded prisons. As a result, the solution to overcrowding relies in reforming these same policies. My thesis is the solution to the California prison overcrowding is by implementing policies at the institutional level, as well as correcting overly punitive laws set in place with misguided intentions from the war on drugs. So this systemic reform includes lessening the punishment for nonviolent drug offenses, rehabilitation over imprisonment, as well as decreasing sentences through credit for good behavior. This is the type of reform that can prevent crimes from happening, as well as focusing on rehabilitating criminals, as well as focusing on policies that help existing prisoners. So the Brown versus Plata case was a Supreme Court case where they found that the California prisons violated the prisoners' 8th Amendment rights against cruel and unusual punishment. So the Supreme Court ordered California to reduce prison population to 137.5%, which is about 33,000 inmates. So reform for prisons are very desperately needed, and many of the reforms that I will talk about are a result of the Brown versus Plata case. So the first solution are policies such as the Senate Bill 1506 Leno. This bill will make simple drugs possessions a misdemeanor, reducing max sentence from 3 years in state prison to 1 year in county jail. So what this policy does is prevent non-violent criminals from ever reaching prison, and the punishment for their crimes are matched, and the punishment is not overly punitive. So these harsh punishments do not lower crime. Harsh punishments lead to higher recidivism rates. Proposition 57 is in line with what we have to do for existing prisoners. This is a simple and effective bill that will reduce prison overcrowding by focusing on rehabilitations, expanding parole eligibility for nonviolent criminals, and by encouraging inmates to take part in rehabilitation therapy and vocational programs. What results are lower recidivism rates, which means that prisoners won't, when they're released, they won't come back. Also, this policy only applies to non-violent offenders, so sex offenders as well as violent offenders will not be looked at or released for this program, which leads to higher public safety. The figure on the right shows the basic plan of this proposition. So they will be considered for parole by a board, and then they will be given rehabilitation credit that depends on what programs they decide to take part of, such as parenting, or they can also get college or high school diplomas. Also, in addition, this type of policy will help the juvenile justice. So there are risks to overcrowding reform. Opponents of this reform say that loopholes could release violent and sex offenders. In addition, it will cost over $150 million initially. Also, this type of policy of releasing criminals will put public safety at risk. However, despite this, data shows that the costs will actually go down due to reform. In addition, due to these programs, recidivism rates will also go down. What opponents of this reform are doing or saying are due to past as well as current policies, but this is a new type of policy where change will slowly come. We could even see it in the figure here, percentage rate of returns to prison by fiscal year. After implementing these types of reforms from 2008 to 2011, due to these programs, recidivism rates have actually gone down. And so without these reforms, overcrowding will only grow worse. And so we have to implement policies that reform the system itself, as well as doing away with overly harsh laws for unequal crime. Here's my works cited, and that's it. Thank you for listening.